Hey guys, welcome to a brand new build video. Today we're going to be building Jyn's A180 blaster from Rogue One. And I'm going to show you how I did it, so let's go. So this is Jyn's blaster as seen in Rogue One. Now I'm actually going to be using the Battlefront reference for the majority of this build, as we can get some really good screenshots from the game and we can see it from all the different angles that we need to make a good copy. Now this gun is based off a German Luger pistol. It's quite a famous gun from World War II, and it's just got a few extra bits added onto it which we are going to make in a few different ways. Now the base of this gun is a 6-inch barrel naval Luger. This is a gas-powered BB version, which is pretty much what they used to make the actual props in Rogue One. Now the rear safety lever and the top sight at the back of the gun here are both not present on Jyn's blaster, so we've removed them from the base gun. Now one of the key points of this blaster is that it has multiple attachments in the game, and to accommodate these there are actually different pieces filed out and added onto the gun. So at the back here there's a big chunk of the lip at the top filed out, which I just did with a grinding wheel and some files. Next I began to 3D model some of the parts that I would need that I can't make, as I don't have a lathe or anything like that, so I decided to utilize my new 3D printer. These were modeled and then printed at 0.2mm layer height I believe, and test fitted onto the gun. As I didn't quite know how these were going to fit, I actually printed them solid like you can see here, and then cut away the section as required to get a nice flush fit to the gun. It could have been a bit better, but we can make do for this build. Yeah, looks pretty good to me. The barrel was made from a 1¼ inch aluminium pipe. The holes were measured as per the reference, the best I could, and then drilled out using progressively bigger drill bits. I went to my local hobby store and picked up some sheet aluminium. This is going to be used to build the main frame section of the gun. I measured my base gun and then drew out the pattern, which was then cut out with a mix of the rotary tool and just a simple hacksaw. The hacksaw actually did a better job and was much cleaner in cutting this one out. These pieces were then bent to shape using the hobby vise. I kept refining it as I went till the metal fit the shape of our base gun. Now I wanted this whole blaster to be disassemblable, so that everything could be taken straight off again. So what I was going to do is drill and tap these metal pieces and then drill and tap the base gun, so that everything can just be bolted straight to it with no glue. That was the aim, to have it still functioning as a replica gun, which the glue would kind of inhibit. So this meant busting out my drilling and tapping set and drilling and tapping a lot of holes into these pieces. I used some hex screws I had lying around. I believe these were all M3, so I tapped all the holes to an M3 thread and then test fitted all the bolts as I went to make sure that the tap was successful. Now I wanted to fill in all these holes in the main barrel, as in our reference photos they are actually filled. Now I couldn't find a tube the right diameter to slide inside the one that I had, so I decided to cut up this piece that I found. It's actually the inside of a spool, of some kind of cord that I got from work, but it seemed just the right size to sort of cut up and bend to shape to backfill those holes up. I used my metal shears and cut it down till the shape fitted just the way I wanted it to, and till it was the right shape to fill in those holes. Everything was then test fitted once again. My 3D printed barrel end was then tested and then glued into place to hold everything together. I then patterned and cut out the other side of the blaster. Now this blaster is asymmetrical, so the two sides are not the same. I actually modelled the other side on the side I'd already done, which is a mistake. It's not actually the same. And you can see this side has a cutout which shouldn't be there for that little rectangular piece on the other side. This piece was again drilled and tapped, as was the frame, to accept those M3 hex screws. Now on the left hand side there's this little detail piece. This, again, I marked out, but just quickly cut it out using my metal shears. This was then refined on a grinding wheel and then hand filed to its finished shape. Now, it took a lot of test fitting and bending to get these pieces to sit together how I wanted it to. When it was there, I used a bit of super glue to tack it in place, and then decided to go in with some epoxy sculpt to thicken up that area to get it looking more how it does in the game. For those who don't know, the epoxy sculpt is a 2-part epoxy which then goes off after about 24 hours. I use it to shore up that connection and then give it a thicker look a bit later on, just so it looks more like a milled piece of metal than a bent piece of metal. After some more measuring and working out in the computer, I modelled this under rail piece for the barrel and then sent it straight to my 3D printer to print out. It came out well first time. Because I had measured quite carefully, it actually fitted really well straight off, so this ended up being the final piece from the first print. It was just test fitted and then glued straight to the under barrel piece. Like I said, I'm not gluing anything to the frame. The only thing going to the frame is those screws which are bolted in. And because of this, the whole assembly can just be slid off and worked on separately from the main gun. Here you can see my sculpting work making that section look a bit thicker. Once it's painted up, hopefully it'll blend right in. Now most of the prints got hit with some XTC 3D to smooth them out, and then everything was hit with a standard grey primer just to give a good base layer. Then all this was sanded smooth again, just so we have a nice surface to get that metallic paint job down. Everything got a coat of a satin black spray can as well. This gives a nice undercoat for the metallic surface we're going to be putting over the top. The masking was peeled off so we can give that silver paint job and so we can blend it into our actual pieces of metal. To colour these pieces in the right colour, I decided to use a silver leaf rub and buff. I have not used this before, but it actually went on really well. I'm really happy with how it blended in. Once it's dry, it does look like that dull aluminium finish which I wanted to have on the gun. As its name suggests, once it's dry it can be buffed to a bit of a shine, which does blend in really well. You can also see here that epoxy sculpt blends in really well when painted straight over with the rub and buff. I decided to try some Tamiya acrylic modelling paints to put in the weathering and the different colours I wanted on this build. I tried to do that heat scoring on the end of the barrel with a metallic blue and a metallic red. It didn't work as well as I would like, so I ended up removing most of it, but here you can see me trying to put it on and blend it off. These Tamiya ones do dry really quick, so it's really tricky. I think the only way I would get it is if I got an airbrush and learned how to use it well, and that's, I think, the only way to get a really good heat mark like you see in the in-game model. All of this was then weathered down with one of the Tamiya paints, which was a dark iron. It actually has a really nice black for weathering, making this look all grubby and horrible. Now, one of the things I had neglected to do before the painting was to add these 4 little doodads on top of the gun. Now, from what I can see, they're like little screw threads on top, and luckily I had some little retention screws from one of my lightsaber builds lying around, so I marked the top in 4 even places, spacing it out evenly, and then drilled and tapped the top to accept these retention screws. These were then glued in place with super glue, which seemed to hold them pretty well. I did one final pass of weathering with it all together with that dark iron. The barrel had been separate until this point, and I did just a dab of super glue to glue it in. I used that dark iron wash all over there. It did dry really quick, so if you're going to use the Tamiya paints, I'd watch out. It got a bit tricky to remove it, so you got to do it really quick. The final piece of gun was actually one of the trickiest to find. It's a sort of filed metal ball with a hole running through the center. Now I wanted to try and source this part instead of make it, as I wanted it to be in metal. After looking around, my dad actually came up with the answer, and it's a brake union piece from an old brake system. I'll link it in the description below, but I ordered the smallest one that they did, and it turned out being almost exactly the right size, and I'm really happy with this piece. All I had to do was cut it down. I then threaded the end. Something actually went wrong when I was tapping this and the gun itself, so the thread didn't actually work, so I ended up just gluing it in place with super glue, which again seemed to hold it fine, but I would have liked to have threaded it, but beggars can't be choosers in this case. And that was the last step. Our gun was finished and ready for the big reveal. So there it is, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. This one was pretty fun to do. There's a few things I would do differently if I were to do it again. You know, I would like to improve on some of these 3D prints a bit. But overall, pretty happy. And another piece to go on the shelf. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, where I keep building awesome props for you guys, just be sure to hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Hacha, hacha.